Peace everyone, Unmask Art here, and welcome back again for another live pastel tutorial. And today, well, as you can tell from the title, we're going to be working on a blurry background, but as you can see on my piece of pastel mat here, I have a cutout of a deer. And I did this using the masking film or the frisket, whatever you want to call it, just like I did with the fox on the previous tutorial a couple weeks ago. I did the same thing here with the deer, but because this is a quite large piece and there's going to be a bit of detail here, I decided I'm going to break it up into two tutorials instead. So this week we're just going to focus on the blurry background because there's quite a large area to cover here. And then next week we will do the deer and get into a little bit more detail, similar to how we did the owl. We kind of focused on some particular details, and next week we'll do the same thing, but in this case we'll do it on a deer. And I want to thank really quick Lynn for suggesting this. This just way to show that I do take the time to look at your guys' comments and read them and look for suggestions. So your suggestions do not go unnoticed, I promise. And this is just one of many examples to help prove that. So thank you again, Lynn, for the wonderful suggestion. I really liked the idea of doing a deer when I came across your comment, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And for everybody that is in the chat right now, Wendy, Jason, Laura, Chrissy, Jake, Paula, Jeff, Garbod, Kim, great to have you all here, and let's go ahead and get started. So real quick, again, I'm using the Clairefontaine pastel mat, the frisket masking film, and the what are these? I forget the name. The Rembrandt soft pastels, the pastels we've been using for a few weeks now. So anyways, that's what I'm going to be using, and I am going to be starting with my gray tones in the background. When it comes to doing the soft blurry backgrounds and not getting too much texture and detail in there, it's very important to use a blending tool so that you can control the amount of dust. And the other important quality of getting good soft backgrounds is to use layering. It's very, very important that you go slow and you build your colors up slowly, because if you try to just lay them all down right away, when you go to blend out, you'll get more of a muddy look rather than a soft, colorful look. So I'm going to start with a medium gray here, rather dark, and I'm just going to start breaking up where some of my greens come in. So you see kind of the leaves of the trees behind the deer here. And I am referring to the reference photo, which is available for free in the description. So if you want the reference photo for this lovely picture that I'm going to be creating, the link is in the description with the line art as well. And one of the other questions that I received not too long ago was how I get the line art onto my pastel mat. And I mentioned back tracing in, I think, the owl tutorial, if I'm not mistaken. And I did my best to explain that process very quickly. Essentially, it's just sketching on a scrap piece of paper. I usually use just printer paper because it's really cheap. And then I just do a back tracing method, which I have covered in multiple videos, but I think it's pretty clear what I do in the owl tutorial. So if you want to know how I got the line art down on this piece, I did the same thing that I did in the owl tutorial. So just refer to that quickly. I go over it actually twice in that live stream. So I'm just brushing a little bit of this color in. Most of this area here is dark gray, and actually most of the background, in fact, is dark gray. And that's why I'm using this as kind of my base color. Now you'll notice that as I'm working around this masking film, I'm never pushing towards the edge. I'm always brushing away. And you'll see like there's this little gap here between. Don't worry about that, because when I use the sponge brush to blend it, I can bring, here I'll just show you really quick, I can just bring that color right up to the edge. I'll need a couple more layers to make it as thick as I need, but when I'm blending with my sponge brush, I'm always moving away from the edge. I don't want to peel up my masking film here. It's very delicate, but it's also very good. So you just want to be careful with it, because if you peel it up, it doesn't stick. It's really low tack, so it doesn't stick very strongly, but it sticks to the perfect amount for it to work for this particular technique here. And I do the same thing around my taped border here. Oh, hello, Zach, DJ, Juan, Christine, Tracy, Chris. Oh, Chris, I haven't seen you in a while. I'm glad to see you in a live stream. And as always, if you guys have any questions throughout the tutorial, feel free to ask as many questions as you want. I want to be as helpful as I can while you guys have me here live. So if you have any questions from previous tutorials or anything like that, just feel free to ask. I'm happy to give you as much information as I can in this live stream. Make it as enjoyable and helpful as possible. So the amount of pressure, really quick, the amount of pressure that I'm using with this medium gray here is just letting all the paper do the work. So if you just set the pastel on there and move it across, that's all the pressure that I'm really using to get to this color on there, because I'm gonna build up layers slowly to get the desired look that I want. And for this first layer, essentially I'm just kind of building a base coat, because the background is rather dark, but you don't want to go too dark with it, because you want a lot of your contrast to be in the foreground subject. So as dark as you see the background, I highly recommend steering away from using black. I will not be using any black whatsoever today. I'll probably be using a little bit of blues, maybe a little bit of purples, and then of course some greens, a touch of orange, perhaps in the background a little bit, but mostly it's kind of just a gray color for the background. So that's what I'm using here. And for these sticks and twigs and things that you see that are out of focus from the camera that took the photograph, and I am referring to the reference photo, not my drawing here, those you can put on the top layers. So you can ignore those twigs and sticks and things that are in the background on the first initial layer. Oh, hello, Anna. Very happy to see you. Sandra as well. I'm really pleased at the amount of people that have been enjoying my live pastel tutorials. So it's been super great to have you guys responding so well to the tutorials, and I hope that you guys have been enjoying them. If you enjoy this tutorial today, give the video a like so that I know that I'm doing something right, and I will keep them coming for as long as I can. And for those of you that might be new to my channel, or this might be your first live stream with me, I do have a pastel course that I sell, and I have the link in the video description along with the reference photo for this particular piece and the line art. And of course, if you ever want to learn more and enjoy these live streams even more, I do live stream over on my Patreon page. So if you want to learn from me a bit more directly, you can always join me on Patreon and learn colored pencils, pastels, graphite, whatever whatever big project we're kind of working on at the time. Usually let my patrons kind of dictate the projects that I create. Currently we're doing a fairly large still life piece with colored pencils, going through all the basic techniques of colored pencils, talking about texture, composition, contrast, all the basics of colored pencils. Does the mid-tone gray help you control the saturation of the other colors? Jake, that is a fantastic question, and that is absolutely right. So there's a lot of colors that are in the background. There's quite a bit of bluish purple occurring in this area of the background. If you look closely at the reference photo, lots of blues and purple. And pastels, they don't usually come in like in desaturated colors. If you have a large selection, you can get some pretty desaturated colors. But for the most part, the blues are quite bright. The only difference is you have some cool blues and you have some warmer blues, but they're all pure pigment because that's what pastels are. So the only way to really control saturation levels is to mix on your paper. You can't really mix before applying. That's not really an option with pastels. So applying grays, whether it's a dark gray like this or a little bit lighter, and then mixing colors over top of them, or vice versa, adding color and then using gray. When you blend those out on the piece, that helps control the saturation level of the color. So the gray, the gray base color here is exactly what I am using it for, to kind of control that saturation. Because the next color, indeed, I am going to be using a bit of blue, and I think I'm going to try this blue here. I think this was the blue that didn't want to work last time. Yeah, it's so smooth. This pastel is so smooth that it doesn't really want to go on, but I'm going to let the paper grind it off a little bit. And I'm not trying to make any particular pattern here. Let me grab a knife, scrape some of it off. Yeah, not too often you come across a pastel so smooth that it doesn't want to color. And I try to scrape off some of that smooth surface, but it's still not really working. I'm just going to switch blues. Whatever. We're going to go with a brighter blue here, cobalt kind of blue. And I'm just going to throw in a little bit of this cobalt blue, not a whole bunch, because when I blend it out, I don't want this to be completely blue. I'm going to throw in some over here, a little bit up here as well. Alright, now I'm going to jump over to a bit of light forest green. I think that's about what this color is. Let's see, it looks like I got a couple questions. When tracing the initial sketch onto printer paper, do you freehand it or do you transfer the sketch some other way? So if you have, I think I mentioned this last week, if you have a printer, just print the line art out. That makes it a lot easier. There's really no reason to spend a lot of time figuring out how to get the line art onto your paper. You can trace it off your TV. You can freehand it. You can use the gridding method if you really want to be super accurate. I have a number of tutorials, drawing tutorials on my YouTube channel that I've done in the past on how to draw things accurately, whether it's hands or faces or something like that. But the techniques that I explain in those live streams, they were live stream tutorials that I did, are the exact techniques that I use when drawing any object ever. So it's kind of a scaffolding method that I've adopted from after I learned the grid method, because I used the gridding method for a number of years when I was younger in high school and stuff. And then as you get better and better, at drawing you don't have to rely on the grid method as much, because you need less information to draw accurately, because your mind starts to build things for you, essentially. Did I miss another question? Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat. You guys are really throwing the questions at me. What hot press watercolor paper would you recommend for polychromos? Well, here's a little thing you got to know about me. I do not like working on watercolor paper when I'm using colored pencils, so I can't recommend one. Not a fan of watercolor paper because I find it much too absorbent for solvent, and I prefer things without texture, so I usually lean towards the smoother paper, like the Bristol plate. That's my favorite paper to use. Or the Stonehenge Vellum. That's another paper that I generally use for a lot of my work, especially when it comes to tutorials and things like that. But I'm not discouraging you from using watercolor paper. Paper is a personal preference. Any sound artist will say that. There's a lot of people that do a lot of wonderful work on multiple different kinds of paper. So yeah, watercolor paper can't really help you there because I never use it. How am I finding the Rembrandt pencils, pastels? Other than that dark blue that I just can't seem to get to lay down, they're nice. They are really nice. I like to use them. Let's see. Let me try to catch back up to the chat. It's going to be harder when these live streams get more popular and I can't follow the chat as well. Oh, hello, Steve. Good to see you. And Archangel Arts. I believe I came across a comment, or maybe you did you pledge on Patreon yesterday? I think. I don't know. Your name sounds really familiar. I think you might have joined me on Patreon. So thank you for that if you did. Anyways, I'm getting a little distracted here. Let me go back to adding some color, and I think I'm going to go with this really dark brown and just add in a little bit of dark brown in here. This whole scene that's happening right now, if you can even justify it as a scene, is literally just the base layer. So this is where you can be really, really creative with your color choices and kind of play around with the direction that you want to take your pastel painting, because you don't have to follow the color scheme exactly of the reference photo. You know, we're artists here. We take the liberty of expressing what we like differently based on our color choice. So for me, I like to throw in a lot of colors into my backgrounds and things, especially if I find myself applying those same colors to my subjects. Now that's also a really important thing to remember when you're dealing with a background and a foreground subject. There has to be some kind of matching between the two color schemes, because if I were to do like a bright purple pink background and then I just have this natural looking deer where I don't apply any of the bright purples or pinks to my deer, it's gonna look really awkward in like a poorly photoshopped image. So just remember that the colors that you apply in the background, you want to find yourself adding those to your foreground subjects as well. Anyways, I think that's enough brown. I think I'm going to, I might have lied. I think I am going to use a bit of black, but only to darken the contrast a little bit. But I'm going to make sure that I don't leave anything black. That's going to be what I'm going to go for here. It's just a bit too bright for my liking, and I want to just bring in a little bit more contrast, especially around the corners up here and down here. So I'm applying just a small amount of black. And I'll probably just go right over top of that with some more gray. I want to get the paper covered a bit more before I take the time to blend out. Will I be doing any projects in Mermaid? Probably not related to mermaids. What could I do to avoid getting pastels everywhere when using them? Blend with a sponge brush. When I first started pastels, I really enjoyed using my finger, and it creates a lot of dust when you do that. I still really like the control that I get by blending with my hand, and it's fun to get more physically involved with the medium, but it does create a lot more dust because your finger actually lifts off a bit of the pastel. So that blending with a sponge brush will help, and then also not going real heavy. You don't have to press with pastels at all. You can go really lightly and just slowly build up layers. That will help tremendously. The other thing is your paper choice. If you're using a Canson Mitenta paper, then you're going to get a bit more dust because that paper, although it is a little texturized on one side in particular, it's not real deep texture, and so that the pastel tends to lift off a little bit during the coloring process. So paper choice is also another really big component to eliminating the dust. And that's why I really like using the pastel mat. I wish that I could get more UArt paper, but they just they don't sell them in the size that I would like. I'd have to buy them and then cut them all up, and besides, I have to buy them in large sheets and then have them shipped to me, which cost more than getting the gummed pads of Clairefontaine pastel mat. So that's the unfortunate part. I do like using UArt paper as well, and I find that paper controls the dust a lot because there's so much texture in sandpaper that the pastel sticks to it really well. Do I find the Rembrandts create much less dust? No, I do not. In comparison to the Faber-Castell pastels that I have, I actually don't see any difference at all between the amount of dust that is created. Okay, I am now going to start blending my background with my little sponge here. And I'm not doing any sweeping motions. Now I think this is going to be an important factor in creating the blurry background overall. Instead of doing like sweeping back and forth or vertical or anything like that, I'm just going to tap it. I'm just going to tap the pastel to blend it. That's going to get these little circular shapes, slightly circular shapes, which is just going to add to the bokeh effect of the camera lens. So I'm just going to tap my colors and slowly soften the texture and cover the paper. That's going to be the key. But like I said, this is just the first layer, so there's still going to be quite a bit of paper showing through and plenty of work ahead. So you cannot create a good background with a single layer. Layering is so important here. Don't try to overdo the first layer either. You can see that there's still plenty of paper showing through here. I didn't try to cover it up 100%. I kept it a little messy, as you can clearly see. It's quite messy. So I didn't draw anything in particular. I didn't try to make leaf shapes, nothing like that. I just laid down colors generally in the spot that they show up. But other than that, don't try too hard here. especially on the first layer. You're going to throw in some colors that you might like I threw in that bright cobalt blue and a bit of that dark brown. So those are the colors that I have in my base layer, and there's plenty of room to adjust my colors, play around with them a bit more. So don't feel like you've committed to anything real specific on the base layer. What tips would I give to a beginner that tried pastel without knowing anything about them? I think my greatest tip would be to buy my pastel course. Literally, my pastel course, I designed it specifically for people that have never touched a pastel. And in that course, you get to create 5 really great pieces. And I've seen a lot of people send me their work from that course, telling me they've never touched pastels before in their life, and they couldn't believe that they were able to follow the tutorial and create something that they were really proud of. I'm not trying to shill my merchandise or anything like that, but the truth is I put a tremendous amount of effort in that course, particularly for people that want to get into pastels. And the tutorials are very similar to what you're seeing here. I take you through step by step with the colors. Not only do I do that, but I have a camera on my selection of colors, and every time I change a color, you see exactly precisely what color I'm using at any given time, and it's 6 hours worth of information between the 5 projects. So that would be probably what anybody that is looking for or looking into getting into pastels, that is the direction I always point them to, because I think that it's very coherent and easy to follow for any level. And I've had very young students as well take the course. But other than that, a little bit more general tips I would give is to remember that pastels are a layering medium just like any other medium, that you have to take your time with your layers. Cover your paper completely. Don't rush ahead with blending. So for this background, somebody might do like 2 layers and they're not going to like the way that it looks. Like, I don't like the way that it looks right now. It's just, it doesn't really make much sense, and it's not very blurry like. And then people would get to the stage here that you see me at, and they would feel discouraged because it doesn't look like what they want it to look like. And that's just simply a lack of layers, not really a lack of skill. So stay patient. That's one of, I think that's one of my more common tips that I repeat over and over again, is that you need to stay patient. Artwork is a patient process. Anything that you can create in 5 minutes, I don't generally regard as art, simply because I think that for me, art requires a degree of patience, and so anything that can be created in just a matter of minutes is a lot less regarded as art, in my opinion. So take your time and have fun. Pastels are an incredibly fun medium because they're so easy to use. They don't require a whole lot of anything, really. And if you're interested in pastels, maybe start with some simple landscapes, because landscapes they help you establish composition skills. They help you establish color value skills. They help you slowly establish adding texture, like grass and trees. Gradients as well, creating gradients because you have sky, you have water with landscapes. So that's where I started with pastels, doing landscapes, because for me it seemed like the easiest subject to get into, and I think that I was right. It helped me build the confidence with pastels, slowly inching my way towards more detailed subjects. Just started. So Kim, you just started learning colored pencils? Yes, colored pencils, another favorite medium of mine. Love working with colored pencils. Now, if there's any medium that requires a great deal of patience, that would be colored pencils. I mean, the moment you rush with colored pencils is the moment you ruin whatever it is you're working on. I apologize that this blending technique here is taking a little bit longer, but like I just said, patience. It's important not to rush, so I'm taking my time with it. Anytime you finish a piece of work and you look back on it and you find your mistakes, you can almost always explain those mistakes as the point in time in which you began rushing, where you wanted to get it done. It was that moment where you started enjoying your work less and less, and you wanted to get it done. And so you started, scribbling a little bit faster with your pencil, or blending a little bit heavier with your sponge brush. That's why patience is probably the most important quality of a good artist. Sorry, I'm trying to read the chat. Forgot to keep blending. Yeah, I listen when I work off camera. I usually listen to music while I work. Sometimes I'll listen to like a podcast or something, or some kind of interview of somebody that has something nice to say. Sometimes I'll listen to stand-up comedy. That's one I like to do. It's always nice to have a good laugh while you're working. Keeps you relaxed. Laughing keeps you relaxed. I would try. I do my best to be funny, but I'm really not. Every once in a while, I come across a comment on my channel, somebody mentioning that I'm funny or something like that, and it just honestly it makes me laugh every time I come across a comment like that, or when somebody says that I'm funny. Because I'm not funny, and I'm laughing now because it's funny for me to think that anybody would find me funny. All right, So the background looks a little flat, and some layers of some nice colors are really going to help that come out. For these brighter areas here, it's a little bit safer to make them larger than it is to make them too small. So I'm going to try to keep these leafy areas quite bright with my green, and then just kind of creep in with my darker colors in the next layers. Is there a basic toolkit that I can recommend? You know, I haven't really looked to see if there are like kits of pastels. I don't think getting started with pastels is all that expensive, to be honest with you. The paper is probably the most expensive part of pastels, because you can get a nice set of the Faber-Castell pastels, like a 48 or even a 72 set of them, for I'm trying to think, right around $30 or so. So not a lot at all for a really great color selection. And then you can get a 12-pack of the Carbothello pencils for like $10, or maybe 20, depending on where you're from. And then get a pack of the pastel mat for another $20, $30 or something like that. Yeah, you have to kind of invest about $100 into the medium to like just get started right away. But I can assure you that if you enjoy creating art, that $100 investment you'll just love it. You won't really think that you lost money on it, because pastels are just that fun. Do I recommend a particular brand of tape for taping down your pastel paper? Tried masking tape, but it tore my paper. So the masking tape that I'm using is just painter's tape. So get like not a heavy, like a low tack painter's tape, because yeah, you don't want it tearing your paper. The other thing, when you peel it off, always peel it away from the edge. If you peel it towards the edge, you're likely to start peeling up the surface of the paper. So that's something. Painter's tape is great for this. I've never had any issues with it. So yeah, and this is just from my local home improvement store. So yeah, I didn't spend a lot on this tape. But for other painter's tape, for like a more delicate work, the tape that I highly recommend, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if you can, where all you can get this, but this is my favorite masking tape right here. It's a bit expensive, to be honest with you, but I have yet to come across a tape that even comes close to this. This is by far the best tape that I've ever used. So make note, multi-surface frog tape, and it's perfect for everything. All right, let's add some more color here. I'm gonna grab a little bit of purple. I'm gonna grab this kind of a lavender purple color, and I'm just gonna throw in a little bit of lavender here. I think this lavender is gonna look really nice with the bright green. So I'm just gonna scribble some of it in here. Really no rhythm or anything particular placement of this purple. I'm just kind of sticking it in some of the darker areas of this piece. There. Not going to add too much of it. And I'm going to add a bit more blue. I want some more blue in here. I don't feel like I have enough, so I'm just going to scribble some blue back here where it's a bit darker as well. A little bit up in this corner. The goal here for me, anyways, with the background, is to have something close to the reference photo, but not exactly. I'm not when I use a reference photo, unless it's a portrait, I don't ever go for exactly. I find that to be boring for me. So I don't really get in there and like zoom in on the reference photo. I'm actually zoomed out quite far on the reference photo, so I get more of an idea of the contrast and the subtle colors. So if you're looking to do things exactly, you're probably gonna have to take a lot more time than I am right now. All right, let's see here. I want to bring in a bit more medium gray here to blend out these colors and get a better coverage on my paper. So I'm gonna bring in this slightly lighter gray than what we used before, I think, just to add a few extra layers and desaturate those colors so that they blend out really nicely. And let's see, I'm gonna bring in the black again to add a bit of contrast to a few of the spots. Very, very small amount. Very small amount. Why exactly recreate something just print it out if you're going to do that? Yeah, a lot of people have that opinion on the hyperrealism. I do like some hyperrealism, but only when it comes to where there's the whole thing's not hyperrealism. There's a really great painter that I love, Omar Ortiz. He paints really, really big, which I love. I'm a super fan of painting big. He's an oil painter, and he's known for hyperrealism, but he also has an element of painter-like borders where it's like hyperrealism, like in the focal point, and then as it gets towards the edges, it like slowly turns more into a painting. And his work is just so wonderful. I love his work. He does do some nude work, so if you're not into that stuff, you might not want to look him up. But he does have some just like classical paintings that I think anybody could enjoy. But he's one of my favorite painters for sure. I actually did a copy of one of his paintings for a project when I was in college, and it was a lot of fun to do. He has just a wonderful style and a really nice attraction to the really bold red. The way he uses red in his work is just awesome. Yeah. Alright, now that we got the darker areas blocked in, let's see here. I think I'm going to add a little bit of this kind of gray green, real desaturated green, and I'm going to start kind of adding in where the brighter spots are, just to get a bit more pastel there. Yeah, be better than the printer. That is definitely the mindset that I would say is most attractive when it comes to the hyper realistic type of work. And I would say that Omar Ortiz is a painter that paints a lot better than any printer could. Now I'm not trying to get any real clear shapes here with this color, not trying to draw in any leaves or anything like that. So avoid doing that. Usually if you start doing those those leaf shapes and pressing them in, you might not be able to get the shape out, and it will look a little awkward and weird. We're not trying to create any texture in the background. We just want it to be soft and blurry. Let's see. I'm gonna grab a bright green, super bright green, and I'm just going to scribble in a bit of this, so I have a nice foundation for my green here. And this is a really bright green. Cannot overstate the brightness of this green. The background will make a bit more sense once I peel the frisket off, and I will do that at the end. Once I feel satisfied with the way my background looks, then I'll take off the frisket, and we'll have those nice clean lines that I just love. I love having those crisp, clean lines. Alright, I still feel like I want a bit more blue, and I think I'm going to go for this blue. I don't know how this is going to look, so let's just do a bit of experimenting. I'm going to add a bit more blue here, maybe a little bit here. We're still kind of in the middle of the base layer here, so I'm not trying to add any of those sticks yet. Just adding my colors. Maybe a bit of dark purple. I think that's what I would like. Let's see here. What dark purple do I have? Kind of have this one. So I think before I used this one, wait, did I? No, maybe it was this one. I don't even remember. Let's go for a different purple then. I think this is a darker purple. Yeah, it's a little bit darker. Let's throw in a little bit of purple here. And let's see, I'm going to grab the black again. I feel like I need just a little bit more black in some of these areas so that when I blend out, I have really nice contrast. And then I can add some of the twig details over top of things, and it will look really good. All right. I think it's safe to blend out. So let's just go ahead and start tapping our piece all over again. So art is not supposed to look real. So I think that it's best to say that that art is undefinable, and I don't think there's any real purpose in the argument of what is and what is not art. I think if you spend too much time arguing what is and is not art, then you lose the time that you could be spending creating what you want. So try not to get too caught up in what other people perceive to be art, because I mean there might be somebody, there's got to be somebody that exists that might come over and look at my work and be like, you're not an artist, you're just, I don't know what they would say. I have a hard time imagining that somebody exists, but there might very well be somebody that does. So doesn't make them wrong, it just makes them have an opinion like anybody else. My instruction on layering and patience have made a huge difference for me, and I wanted to say thank you. Well, thank you, Jason, for letting me know. I really appreciate that. That's good to hear. I really enjoy getting the random comments and emails. I just got a few emails the other day. Somebody emailed me to just thank me for what I do, and it seems odd to me sometimes that anybody would be thankful for me just having fun. I come onto the live streams. For the most part, I just paint or draw whatever I want, and talk to you guys about what I think and the process that I'm going through with my work and what I'm doing, and whatever I can to whatever knowledge I can provide anybody at any time to help them in their own progression. That's all I try to do, and I don't do it for any special accolades or anything like that. The only reason I became a professional artist is because people enjoyed what I was doing. I don't know. It literally for me, becoming a professional artist kind of just fell into my lap because I was doing something that I enjoyed doing, and the response from all of you great people has been what allows me to continue doing this. So that's the secret to my success. That's the story of my success, is that you guys enjoy what I do, and yes, you guys thank me for what I do, and it for me, I almost feel guilty sometimes because it's just fun. It's like I just get to have fun and create things, and you guys enjoyed enough that I'm able to successfully make a living from it, which still kind of blows my mind some days. I think about it, and I'm like, sometimes, like almost every morning, I usually go out to my kitchen. Sun's starting to come up, or has come up. I don't wake up that early every day, but I look out the window, and I just think about where I'm at. Like, if you would have caught me 5 years ago and told me, hey, guess what? In 5 years, you're going to be a professional artist living in Poland. I would have been like, why would I be in Poland? Like, why Poland? So it all kind of just fell onto my lap because, as many of you know, I have a degree in mathematics, and I was studying. I got my degree in math particularly to teach math, and somehow that turned into being an artist that now gets paid to teach art, and yeah, it was very. It's a funny story. It's a funny story. I still sometimes don't realize how I got here, but I never would have if it weren't for all the wonderful support that you guys give me. You know, just coming to the live streams, sharing the videos. I don't. For transparency, I don't make my living through YouTube, like AdSense kind of thing. Yeah, there's no living made from that. It's just from selling my courses and Patreon. So you guys control my livelihood. That is the truth behind it all. And all I can do, all I have control over, is creating art and teaching in a way that you guys respond to. So back to this tutorial a little bit, since I've just been kind of tapping and blending. You'll notice that as you get to the next layers, colors, they don't want to move as far, and use that to your benefit. So as you get closer and closer to the top layers, you'll want to place them more accurately. I have my nice dark contrast, I think. So probably won't have to use any more black. Now we can just start putting in some more colors, creating a bit more depth in our background, bringing out some of those sticks and twigs. Oh, thank you, Chris. Yes, I don't know where I developed my teaching style because, like I said, I got my degree in math, and I never actually got to teach math. So long story short, after graduating from the University of Washington, I applied for my master's. I did not get accepted, so I decided I'm just going to take a year off school and live in Poland with my now wife, then girlfriend, and never went back. Just in that year of time, I got more and more into my YouTube channel, and I was like, maybe I can make some money while I'm taking a year off, and now I don't need to go back. But I was never formally educated on the methods in which people respond to teaching. I didn't start even really doing tutorials for quite a bit of time, but then as I learned how to use colored pencils, how I learned to use pastels, I was my own personal teacher through the process, and I just regurgitate the process that I took to learn, what I think about. So essentially, all I do is tell you what I'm thinking in the moment of my work. So I guess I just think naturally as a teacher. LS, you went to the University of Washington? Oh, that's really cool. Small world. Yep, I graduated in 2014. Oh, thank you, Hello Shiny. I'm glad you're liking the background so far. Still a bunch of work to do, but I think we'll get there. I'm gonna grab this. I think this is even brighter than the previous green. It's more of a neon yellow color. So I'm gonna start adding a bit more to my leaves here. Creating a bit of sunlight. Never underestimate Andrella. Never underestimate what people will enjoy, because I certainly did. I just made videos because I enjoyed making videos, and it was the response from what people enjoyed about my videos that allowed me to keep doing what I do. So if you just do your coloring videos, the audience that enjoys them will eventually show up if you market yourself correctly, if you take the time to produce, the quality that you want. Because I didn't really take any. I spent a lot of money on my equipment, because when I get obsessed with something, I kind of tend to go overboard. And when it came to creating YouTube videos, I got nothing short of obsessed. So I spent a lot on my camera, lights, computer, software to edit videos. I think the most expensive thing I spent was my time to learn how to do everything. There was probably quicker, easier ways for me to learn what it is that I do when it comes to my video editing, when it comes to shooting my films, my videos, because I do a lot of editing. I don't do so much anymore, but if you look at some of my past time lapses, like the way that I edit things, like I had to learn how to do that, and I didn't learn from any particular source. I just dove in and taught myself. So don't underestimate what you're capable of, because I would have never guessed that I would be able to make a living doing this. It's not why I started. It's not why I continue. I continue doing it because it's so fun. The math degree makes sense how you're so left and right brain, which is why you're so ambidextrous. Yeah, I haven't, I think last tutorial I used my ambidexterity a little bit, but yeah, I don't know if that actually, if that's actually how that works. Would you approach differently creating a blurry foreground? Oh, okay. So a foreground object out of focus, like a blade of grass or something like that. So not really. Obviously, if you're working with a particular depth of field, that's a really great question, by the way, Garboard. So if you know anything about cameras or photography and understanding of depth of field, you'll know that in this image, the depth of field is that the background is out of focus, but the foreground is in focus. That is the depth of field. But in some other pictures, you have 3 planes rather than just this 2. This just has 2 planes, a background and foreground. But sometimes you have a blurry background, a focused middle ground, and then a blurry foreground. For instance, like a dog sitting in grass, like real low, and then you have some blades of grass in the foreground that are blurry and out of focus, and then it slowly gets into focus, and then it slowly gets back out of focus. That's the depth of field, and that's just due to a low aperture on the camera taking the photograph. And for those foreground objects, the approach would be a tiny bit different because you're working on top of other things. So what I would do, most likely, in particular with like a blade of grass, is I would draw the blade of grass and then I use my brush to soften it and to make it look out of focus. I don't know if I've really worked on a project that has such an object, but if I did, most likely that's the way that I would approach it. All right, let's, I think I want to go a bit greener with some of my leaves. So I'm going to bring in some more bright green. I'm not sure this is the green that I want. but I'm going to apply some of this just to bring out a bit greener look. It's kind of scribbling it. Yeah, I think that's the color that I want. I'm using the tape on the side to clean my sponge brush a little bit. Or actually, I'll just flip it over. And tap those greens right into the piece. During this process of the background, like I mentioned, not rushing, slowly build up your colors in the areas that you want them. Blend out, layer, blend, layer, blend. Just keep at it until you get the exact look that you want. Because there's so much room for layering with pastels on this pastel mat. You have a lot of room. One of the things, though, that I want to mention is that you got to be careful with your blending. For instance, you can see that I'm focused really tightly on my green here, and I'm not really going outside of these green areas. That's really important because you don't want to just go like this and blend because all your colors will get muddy. So as you add more layers, the detail starts to come out more and more, and your blending has to be tighter and tighter. Slowly getting smaller and smaller with your movements and everything. Yes, I am also a veteran. I was in the Navy. Sorry, I'm looking for... do I ever work on velour paper? I've actually never heard of velour paper, so I don't know. Oh, hello, Brenda. Good to see you. Blossom, you are also in the Navy? That's very cool. All right, well, I'm going to add some sticks here, and I think what I'm going to use is this really, really light blue. So there's a branch kind of coming through here a little bit, so I'm not going to highlight the whole branch, just a little bit of it. There's a branch kind of coming down here like this, coming across, a little bit of a tree showing right there. And another one coming. There's one like scraping across here. There's a few branches up here. There's one back here that I see. And maybe one right here. Now I'm just going to kind of get those in and blend them out completely. That way they just barely show up. I'm going to use the side of my sponge brush. And I still want to do like a tapping motion, but also somewhat in the direction of the branch. Just a little bit. But I don't want to start creating any lines with my blending, so kind of balance the line motion with the tapping. You never want to put this kind of detail into your blurry backgrounds until your base layer is completely done. because trying to work around these details is not only impossible, but if you put them in too early and then you start blending everything out, you're either just going to lose them completely, or because you're adding new color in certain spots, you're going to start getting muddy colors. So that's why you want to establish your base layer first, and then add in the subtle details like the tree branches that are showing up a little bit. So just a little bit there. There's some other colors coming in. I think I'm just going to use a medium gray. I'm going to see what this gray looks like. Yeah, this gray is like perfect. It's right in the middle of the value scale here. Not a whole lot of color, so I can bring in some more of these sticks and things showing through. Do kind of a shadow of that branch right there. Come back over that branch. There's a branch coming down here, I think. I think I see a branch. It's all blurry anyway, so I'm just going to blend out that gray. The other thing that I'm doing here with the background is I'm not going, there's some really bright spots, especially highlighted on this branch where you have those bokeh circles really popping out, and then some spots on the branches down here. So I'm not doing all that. I'm not trying to get there too quickly. All those bright spots will come out in the next layer or two. But adding them too quickly doesn't make much sense, because you're going to kind of blend the colors right over top of them anyway. So they'll just dull right back out. So don't worry about those bright spots too early on, because they'll just get blended out anyway. Do I ever use pan pastels? I have in the past. But they're a bit expensive, and so I tend to use products that I feel are a bit more in the range for people that want to learn pastels. I'm in no way in what I'm doing what I consider like advanced pastel work. My tutorials that I'm doing here on YouTube, especially these live streams, I am keeping the subjects rather simple and the process rather simple, so that anybody can do it. That's kind of my goal. I don't particularly go towards anything advanced on Patreon. I get more. I feel like I get a bit more advanced over on Patreon, because I do projects over weeks, and the people that really want to learn are willing to support me on Patreon for that reason, because I do get a bit more advanced over there. All right, I think it's safe to add some more green, so I'm gonna get in here with a bit more green now. A little bit brighter. And then I'm going to go with this green. Actually, I like this green. This is kind of like a seafoam green. So it will work really nicely for the highlights in these leaves here. At least I think that it will. Yeah, pan pastels do last forever. That is definitely true. Yeah, I would never discourage anybody from going out and getting some pan pastels, but I think just the soft pastels like this are a better option for people getting into. I wouldn't recommend someone that's never used pastels to go out and get pan pastels, because I would find those to be a bit expensive, a bit out of the price range, I think, for people wanting to pick up a new medium. At least they're way out of my price range if I were to start a new medium. Of course, there's not very many mediums left for me to try out, aside from watercolors. I got really close with watercolors with the acrylic inks that I got last year. Still want to play around with those sometime in the future. They're fun. Alright, let's go a little bit brighter now, and I think I'm going to go back to that really light sky blue. I'm going to start with this branch. Add just a bit of highlight to some of these sticks and twigs and whatnot. Not going to overdo it with this one. This one's pretty bright, so I'm going to find another middle color here. So I think I'm going to try light gray. Let's see how much does this show up. This might be, that's a nice medium when it's blended. Medium tone, so this is kind of the lighter gray. It's kind of coming in here and throwing in some sticks. Tapping with my finger, so I don't have to switch back to my sponge brush. Remember, on these, on this far in the layering process, you have to be a bit more accurate with your placement of color, because things don't want to blend as far now. They want to stick where they're at, so just be mindful of that when you get to this stage. Time to pick up a tattoo machine. Yeah, I wanted to do tattoos when I was younger, but I kind of grew out of that. Not to say that tattoos are immature or anything. It was just it was something that I was really into for a little bit, and then lost interest, I guess you could say. Just kind of lost interest in doing tattoos. But that's probably where I started getting most of my commissions, really, really young. I've been designing tattoos since I was in high school. I've always had people that ask me. That's like the first question that I kind of used to getting a bit is, oh, can you design this tattoo? Can you design me a tattoo? That was a very, very common question that I would get when I was younger, and I did it a lot when I was in the Navy too. I designed more tattoos than I can count when I was in the Navy. I always felt weird when people would actually get them. I don't know what I was expecting, but alright, I think I'm going to use a bit more of this light blue, maybe highlight these leaves a little bit more. Just kind of play around with it until I am satisfied with the result. That is what I'm doing at this point. Bright little stick. Right there and right there. I feel like it might be a little bit too gray for me, so I'm gonna grab some blues. I'm gonna grab some blues and throw in some sticks here with the blue. I feel like this is the wrong tone of blue. I'm going to grab this strange purple color that for some reason I am compelled to reach for. I don't know, I just feel like this is the color that I want. And I'm doing a little bit broader strokes, kind of bringing the color into the background a little bit. Not really drawing any details. Just kind of adding some color to some of my empty spaces here. This is the part that I enjoy the most, where I feel like you can just grab whatever color you like and just start applying it wherever you want it, wherever you want to see it. Bring in some more greens. I think I want to fill up more of this area with green. I like this green. This is the right green, in my opinion. Any more drilling from my neighbor? You know, I haven't heard my neighbor drilling in a while now. You might have just jinxed it, DJ. Hopefully not, though. Some of my new subscribers might not know about my continuously drilling construction of a neighbor, but I haven't heard him in a while, so maybe since the weather's been getting better, he spends his time drilling outdoors now, so I don't know. Or maybe he finally finished renovating whatever it is he was renovating, because it was getting ridiculous, that is for sure. I'm going to use this teal color to add in some branches. Just a few little branches with teal. there's still this blue. There's this blue color in the background that I'm not seeing enough of. So I'm gonna grab the cobalt blue and throw some of that into the background now. Yeah, he was very good at working during my live streams. That is true. Wouldn't hear him for a week, and then I'd start live streaming, and he would immediately begin. All right, let's get some blue here. It's looking a little flat in that area. Alright, now I'm just going to do kind of an overall blend. A lot of the colors and things are going to stick where I put them. So I just want to get rid of some of the last bit of texture. I'm doing really, really small circles. I want to get rid of any of the grainy effect that you sometimes get when drawing with the pastels themselves. And I'm going to stay away from my green for now and just do everything else. Those sticks and twigs, if you just softly blend them, they'll just kind of turn into a distant detail. So with my Helix pencil sharpener, it worked really well, but I think I may have killed it by using pastels on it, so I don't recommend it. The pastel pencils, I still waiting to get some of the sandpaper sharpeners, sandpaper block sharpeners for my pastel pencils, but in the meantime I just kind of sort of use my Helix sharpener still with the pastels, but it doesn't seem to work as well anymore. So I might have killed the blade. I might need to buy another one. So I did not read the manual, or I did not get a manual with it that said don't use pastels with it. But perhaps in the future I will refrain from doing such a thing, because it did seem to kill it pretty quickly. Although it worked. I mean, it sharpened my pastel pencils fantastically for a little while. But the colored pencils work super great. I got a couple full graphite pencils so that I can sharpen the blades a bit, and that's what I'm going to try to do to rescue my Helix sharpener. And maybe in the future I'll update you on how well using a graphite pencil helped sharpen it. Because I looked for replacement blades for the Helix sharpener and I could not find any, so I think I'm about done with this background. I think I'm going to just do this last little blending here and then grab another sponge to blend out the green, and then blend out the green, and I'll peel back and reveal the deer. Blurry backgrounds are really, really deceiving because they look like nothing, and then when you put the foreground object in, when you actually get it in, they look quite nice. So So I'm going to take that sponge off and get a fresh one. And you can just wash these sponge tips with soap and water and they work fine afterwards. And I'm going to blend out the green now. Feather it out around the edges. Try to get rid of any sense of texture. I want it to be soft, completely blended out. No harsh edges, no grainy texture. Do this little bit up here, and then I'll do this area right here. And I think that will be it for the day. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like this background took a little bit longer than expected, but hopefully all of you enjoyed the tutorial regardless. It was definitely fun hanging out with everybody. You guys always keep me entertained, that is for sure. I love the questions. You guys had really great questions today. Not to say that you don't have really great questions other days, but especially good ones today. So thank you for participating in the live stream. And don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, so that I know. Alright, yes, I'm satisfied with that blurry background. There's not a whole lot going on there, so let's go ahead and reveal the deer. Love those clean lines. Yes, masking film is so lovely to use. Anyways, that is going to be it for today. Thanks again, everyone, for coming by and watching. I hope that you learned a lot. I hope that you enjoyed it. And I look forward to doing the deer with you all next week. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss next week's live stream. And until then, I will see you next time. Take care. Peace.